Hello, everyone. I'm Leo Fleischman.
And I'm Peter Lyons.
Welcome to TA40, episode 3, if I remember.
It is magic number 3.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk and discuss with my friend Peter about data visualization. One of my favorite topics, I have to say, because I work in business intelligence analytics. And data visualization is something that it's funny because when I started in the company 6 years ago, I knew nothing about it, about data visualization.
Well, I think it's a very new field, right?
Yeah. Now it's completely. It blowed my mind. For me, when graphs were only related to math, and I knew, when you study math, so all the Cartesian graphs were like uh, uh, familiar to me, but all the rest and everything and what you can actually do with them, for me was very alien. I didn't know what actually can do.
So, how would you describe data visualization to somebody who, might have heard of the term, but maybe needs a bit of a refresher on what it means today,
Sure.
as opposed to 6 years ago?
I think that the visualization means that it's a graphical way to understand data uh, in a glance.
So, I think that's a very good high level.
Super high level, yeah.
Very high level. The Harvard Business Review has an article on visualizations that really work, and they say to start thinking visually, you have to think, is the information you're trying to convey conceptual or data driven? In other words, am I declaring something or exploring something? Right. So, in your experience, what type of data, what type of, for the clients that you work with, what sort of things are you doing with the data? Exploring or declaring?
Well, we're doing both. Where, for example, companies come to us because the amount of data that they are producing, it's in the beginning 6 years ago was duplicating like every 6 months, something like that, and now it's quadruplicating.
Wow.
Listen to that amount of data. So
How it's quadrupled in how long?
6 months.
Wow. Okay.
That's insane.
That is, yeah.
So they were trying to understand their data and to make business decisions based on that analysis. So in the beginning, people were using Google Sheets or Excel sheets, and with the amount of data that you had in the past was enough, because you have a table and you can see a list of people that are selling in your company, and you see the products that they're selling and the amounts of money that each one of them are bringing to the company. Was really easy to understand, even visually, because you had all the data in the screen. But what happened if you have, instead of 10 salesmen, you have 200? And what happened if you have even, I don't know, 500? Or if you have an amount of data that it's not visually um, um, comfortable for your eyes to see in one single place. So data visualization comes in that place where you can see in one graph, you can see all this data and all these analysis in one single place. So our customers, for example, we have all kind, and I'm not sure if I can say the names of some of them. Well, actually, I didn't say my company, so maybe I can. So anyway, these companies are huge, and we have all kind, but most of them are tier four. Tier one, which is like really big companies, like I don't know, Coca-Cola or.
What would you say? Who are they visualizing this data for? Is it for their own sort of internal, uh, you know, for their leadership to sort of get a sense of how things are actually operating? Who's bringing in the most revenue? Who has the potential to bring in additional revenue? Or is it for investors to understand something? Or is it for, maybe they have some kind of public relations uh, initiatives that, they want to communicate to the general public something about what they're doing that is best represented in some kind of visualized data? And based on that, what are the different sort of needs when you're presenting something that's a visualization of data to expert domain experts, or investors, or the general public?
That's a great question. These companies are using all kind. They are using it internally for understand their revenue and to proper do the moves that they need to do to actually make more revenue, or even to save money. For example, to know how what it's not working actually, and to cut and to actually save. These times are companies are doing a lot of cuts, and in the past probably they wanted to know what it's working better, and now they want to know what it's not working. For example, there are many companies in the past that were using our platform to understand. We bring, for example, comments from Amazon and reviews to products, and we use artificial intelligence to understand the sentiment. So we did sentiment analysis on these reviews, so we could understand if it's a positive review or a negative review. And this company actually understood from text, from reviews in Amazon, not without stars. It's like if I give you a 3-star review, it's positive, it's negative. Well, you don't really understand.
Yeah, it's sort of
Could be
neither.
also a 2-star, then the comment could be positive.
Yeah.
So we did that, and we bring them like this dashboard. Positive it's green, negative it's red. You can see in a glance, like really easy, like the amount in percentage.
It's like classification analysis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and they were really happy about it. We have examples from software companies that they are using it to analyze the amount of bugs that they have in the product, and to understand what needs to be, if there's a bug that it's really really critical and need to be fixed right away. So when you have many software engineers working together, many teams, it's really difficult to understand which of the bugs it's more critical than the other, because there are different teams. So uh, when we analyze that amount of data and we understand the whole product, we can tell software companies which is the order of priority. So these companies are using it to actually solve software engineering problems. There are other companies that are using it for, I don't want to say the name, but it's a very famous application for people to meet. Uh, so this application is using it to actually make their algorithm better into matching the people, because they have a lot of information from their users, and they analyze this information and they actually find matches.
See, that's interesting to me. Is when we think about the pace of development in machine learning, and we think about right now much of what we call machine learning is supervised, right? There's some kind of human involvement in like labeling or classifying certain training data, right? But as we move to unsupervised learning, how is it possible for a human to wrap their head around how a particular sort of outcome or prediction or calculation was made, right? It seems like it's something that visualization maybe provides some insight into. You can map the the thought process, for lack of a better word, of a okay. So
We're talking about unsupervised. By that we mean that the algorithm learns alone. What you give a final result, and the algorithm is like gonna find its way to the
yeah,
solution.
it's like when DeepMind, Google DeepMind, was playing the international Go champion Lee Sedol.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Its path to sort of defeating this world champion was one that was not mediated by experts, and training data, and it simply was a matter of them taking this entire kind of like all the possible ways that this game could be played and essentially playing against itself over and
Yeah.
over and over and coming up with ways and moves that in the 2,000-year history of the game nobody had ever considered.
Yeah.
Something
Go is
totally
the
novel.
hardest game in the planet, right?
Right, so it's the one with the most possible outcomes,
Yeah.
and you have to think very strategically in terms of like how you
So
play.
in the beginning, the algorithm was taught how to play with learning on other games, and then the next generation of the algorithm actually teach it itself, and that way was like insanely good.
So how for for the creators even of uh, DeepMind, for them to even understand how the thing they created even sort of jumped to those different insights would be incredibly useful, right? Because let's fast forward and imagine unsupervised learning application that is determining things like people's access to credit or anything relating to the judicial system. Do people get parole at a certain time? All of these things that right now police departments and
Don't you think that we're very naive talking, with machine learning, that we trust in stuff like, for example, in my company, when we do something, I try all the time to bring like machine learning on even stupid things like organizing layout. Like in the beginning, we have a design and we see the design and then we did that design. And now it's different. We are actually analyzing the user layout and how he loves to organize the windows and how he or she uses the application.
Mhm.
So the new layout, it's learning by itself how to organize itself. That's very naive and nothing wrong is going to happen with that. But now when we use machine learning algorithms with things that matter, like jails, or we say there's an algorithm that decide if teachers need to be laid off or not. I think that's, and the algorithm, it's a person wrote it, and probably is biased about some things, but it's a closed box. It's like a black box.
And you don't even know the data that it's
You don't
really
even know.
ingesting, or how it's sort of what weight it's giving to different variables. Like how do recommender algorithms work? You know, like when you're on Amazon and you're buying something and it says, "Oh, people who bought this usually also bought this."
Exactly.
And is that just based on, you know, like a linear kind of like regression of like, oh, you know, these inputs tend to be correlated.
Yeah, imagine that you get, that's a great example. Imagine that you get in Amazon, like, oh, people that you bought this book, and then the book, it's like how to be a serial killer, whatever. It's like, what it's gonna make you feel about it?
Or
What
the
you,
YouTube's, you know, YouTube also recommends videos that they always seem to be a little bit more like extreme from, you know, the thing that you watch to like suddenly, you know, it's recommending conspiracy theory videos.
And now YouTube, it's also, there's a one button there that it's like, do you want to see something that you are not watching usually? That's could be interesting, and it could be like, I don't know, a little bit too much. I think that it's gonna bring what and why. It's gonna check that if you want, it's gonna be random. There is such a thing as random in those kind of applications.
Well, what's the objective, right? The objective is to
To
get you
keep you
watching
to keep
more
you
and
watching.
more. So, how do they optimize for that? What kind of content do they know is going to get people more sort of hooked?
Yeah, in the end, they trying to actually. It's, I don't see it like an evil algorithm. They trying to bring the videos that you like to your eyes. That's what they're trying to specifically for YouTube, and also for Amazon is that they're trying to bring to your eyes the stuff that you want to buy.
But how do they measure the degree to which somebody likes?
Clicks, clicks, how much,
How long you're watching
how
them?
long you're looking at something
Yeah.
specifically. In YouTube, there are like many things. Maybe you're like raising the volume up on in some stuff. YouTube is very good at analyzing their videos inside out.
But you know, they could, you know, there's videos of like, you know, terrible things that, you know,
That you like.
The expression is like, you know, watching a train wreck.
Yeah,
You know,
but you're hooked.
but you can't look away.
Yeah,
But does that mean they should be
all the
feeding
time in
that
your
stuff to
face.
you?
If you're clicking all the time those videos, yes, and that's my concern regarding kids, for example.
Yeah.
But it's like, for little kids, there's YouTube Kids, which is fine. It's totally fine, and it's like the parent got absolute control over it. But these teenager kids that they are actually starting to watch YouTube for grown-ups, that's really the problem, because
And-
there's nothing there.
And also people above a certain age that are not really savvy with, don't really understand how these systems are sort of driving them towards,
Oh yeah,
you know, more extreme
I can
content.
see my daughter like watching, being in the iPad. She's like behaving like a drug addict sometimes. When we say like, okay, iPad time, it's over. Now it's time to play or to read or to do something else. Her first reaction, it's like, no, like hugging the iPad like it's her best friend or something. That's And what we do, we actually are giving her the iPad even less when we see those reactions, and that it's provoking that when she is doing it, when she have time to watch the iPad, she's like, she's very, she wants to prevent from us to take that iPad from her, because she knows that her time with it it's very short, and she needs to. It's like a very. We think that it's a very addict. It's you know it's turning on in the brain the same spots that like a drug addict will.
Oh, absolutely. It's dopamine, right? It's
Yeah,
it's it's
also for us.
yeah. But I think at a certain point in your development, you become a bit more aware of, like, you sort of know yourself a little more. And I know when, for example, in the morning when I'm half asleep and I feel like I just need something to kind of wake me up, the first impulse is to reach for my phone and see, like, just get a little dopamine boost to
Yeah,
sort of, like, start the day. And I resist that urge because I know the moment I open and I look at that, yeah, maybe I get a mini dopamine boost, but then it's pulling me into, the
yeah. This
unending scroll.
endless scroll,
Right.
which is it's so evil. It's so evil. Think about it. It's like an endless scroll of things that interest Peter.
And, honestly, I don't feel like a lot of this stuff, I don't feel it actually knows what interests me. It's funny because I see many of these, I think a lot of the data that, these, different platforms have relied on is maybe outdated. Like, for example, with YouTube, if I go and I buy a product, after I've bought the product, I'll start getting ads on YouTube.
Yeah, at
You should
that
buy the.
moment. Yeah,
But I'm like, okay, well, where were you when I was thinking about
yeah. I bought it
the purchase?
already.
I bought it already. You're a little late to the game. So it's like there's a lot of space for them to kind
Yeah.
of.
Well, those those platforms specifically, I think they work on many things, but also they are based on your. Many times I'm looking at something, and then the advertisement goes to my wife.
Hmm.
She's like, "Oh, I saw in my feed like this and this," and I was like, "Huh, that's interesting." I was looking at it,
Hmm.
so it's also related with your circle of friends and family because they think, okay, so maybe if your wife is looking at this, we're gonna show it to you, and maybe you're gonna buy it.
So if we, you know, if we sort of try to unpack, how are these algorithms, you know, coming to these sort of conclusions? What kind of data are they pulling? What are they, what weights are they assigning to different data points? A real good application of, visualization, at least for consumers, would be some kind of, like, graph of, oh, this is actually, how these are the things that we're looking at in your profile. These are the data points that are going into this calculation of, what we show you as a recommended video,
Yeah,
right? But then, is that sufficient? Maybe for now it's sufficient, but maybe as the algorithm becomes more complex, it's really, even with visual storytelling, it becomes really hard for somebody to actually understand, quote unquote, what the machine was thinking. So at
yeah,
what point, does humanity have to actually take a next step to maybe integrate with the machines beyond just what we see? And this is the Neuralink and Elon Musk. He says, for humans to survive, they have to merge. Do you see, how do you see the going from visualizing data to actually maybe directly processing data, somehow that.
yeah. That's very interesting because data visualization born with the fact that we can't hold in our brains enough data to be analyzed. So we need to see these graphs to for us humans to
It's a
understand.
shortcut.
But once we're gonna be hooked with something that with a computer maybe because now right now we have a computer in our pockets all the time. So probably next step is gonna be to be hooked into this computer. I don't see, you know, I'm a tech guy, so for me, it's not that horrible. For my wife, it's horrible. But in the end of the day, it's gonna be what it's gonna be. It's like you can't stop uh, this advancement of technology, and it's impossible unless we destroy the planet. But that's another question. So once we're gonna have the ability to analyze data with our brains or slash computer, maybe these data visualizations are not going to be necessary at all.
Maybe instead of just data visualization, maybe there's ways we can use our other senses. If you have some sort of like different type of input beyond just an image on a screen, but maybe there's some kind of direct interface. Maybe you can smell the quality of training data. You can maybe there's a sense of like, oh, this data is expired. Maybe you can taste the which of the ingredients
Yeah, I
is
get
is
it. I
the
get
is
it.
the most heavily weighted.
That's very interesting what you're saying, because I was thinking in a very linear way. It's like, okay, you have a computer in your brain attached, so actually the queries that we are analyzing, and then those queries are the base for these data visualizations to be made. And once you don't need the data visualizations, you're getting the results with these queries right away in your brain. But you're saying that we can actually, it's provoking reactions in your body. That's very interesting, and could be.
Because the visual cortex is processing this information that's coming. It's all got to go through the visual cortex. But there's also like the auditory, the tactile. There's different feelings of like proprioception, like your position in space. Your body awareness. All of these other sort of parts of the brain could potentially, this data could be maybe processed in parallel instead of all just going through the visual cortex.
So we're gonna pass from data visualization to data reactions. I don't know,
To
body
data
reactions.
experience.
Yeah, I think that we're going way too far in the future, but I can see it happen, definitely. What in a world that Neuralink it's normal to everybody, and 1 in 5 people in the planet have it. I definitely
I
can
mean,
see it happen.
does Neuralink just become sort of like a supplemental kind of like
Phone.
memory storage? Is that all it is?
No.
Or because, in order for it to actually like interface with the different regions of the brain that could do the sort of parallel processing.
Say it
So,
again.
yeah, I mean, if we think about like, you know, human and machine interface or direct like brain machine interface, what does that actually mean? Are we just sort of creating like an external like memory storage that now we can have better, more clear memories, we can replay experiences, or does it actually like allow for more sort of distributed processing of information across the brain?
Well, I think that's the end result. They want to actually to help the brain with some extra faster analysis, like a CPU in your brain.
That's it's a CPU, but it's also like it's a distributed computing kind of like orchestrator, right? Because if it's a matter of like you know more rapid access to information, I mean we already have that. We've already sort of outsourced
Yeah.
virtually all of our memory, our short-term memory, to our devices,
Imagine how
but it
much
doesn't
it
help us think
changed.
better.
Exactly. How much it changed our relationship with people. If someone in the past was telling me, well, this thing is like in 1975, this guy said this and that, I was like, okay. I didn't have, a way to check this information right away. And right now, it's like somebody's like talking, you're like, let me see. No, that's totally wrong. Actually, the guy said blah blah blah.
Yeah.
It's like in 1 second. So imagine that if we have everybody have a CPU in the brain, and we are actually all interconnected, I can actually send you information. I can send you a thought. I can send you, wirelessly a thought. Maybe you can hack a human. Maybe you can actually it's like a gate to his brain. And then if we
Oh,
are interconnected, we're gonna be one brain also.
I would say Facebook and Google have already tried to hack
A brain,
the
a
human
person.
brain without, putting something directly
Well,
in the gray
exactly.
matter.
So now it's gonna be like more direct. I think that as anything in with humans can be used for good,
Mm.
incredibly good things, and I think can be bad actors can use this technology for really bad things. Like anything, like quantum computers, they can be used for extremely good things. But I know that China, for example, is extremely, uh, let's say, unethical in their activities with computers and anything related to quantum computers. There's no, a good book or laws or anything, actually.
Yeah, I think that all of these things, we're going to have our Frankenstein moments. All of these, some of the, when it comes to, how humans are interacting with uh, computers, everything from like, people looking at screens to people, wearing some kind of ridiculous, like, VR headset to, maybe some kind of direct interface that is simulating all of the sort of experience, right? Without the headphones and the goggles. And then, ultimately, I think a lot of these things are it's just trial and error, and people are gonna do very shocking things with some of this technology that we can't anticipate. But I think that that's part of progress.
Yeah,
I mean, think about when the automobile was invented. How many terrible accidents and unnecessary deaths did it take for the automobile manufacturers to install basic safety
yeah, seat belts. Yeah,
seatbelts or fuel tanks that didn't just explode on contact. And
yeah, yeah. But still, today, it's incredible that
but
an
I think
endless amount of people died from.
yeah, and I think it's going to be something similar in any kind of like new frontier. People are going to run to try to just do something, get it done, something new. And the thoughts of like, oh, is this actually like going to hurt people? Is it? I think that's going to come later.
And that's the thing, that when someone is creating something, it's I'm sure that when every uh, tech leader today, that they started their startup, in a garage, they were thinking in good things, and to create something that is going to help humanity. But then these companies grew incredibly, and they actually think in profit more than anything
Well, I
else.
think maybe they're just not able to anticipate, you know, how the tech would be used. At the startup phase, it's sort of like, you don't know all the side effects, right? Now, as those side effects become clear, how do you respond? Well, if the side effects are becoming clear, but you have a, you know, board of directors and, investors, and you're a publicly listed company, how do you manage those side effects? but also, trying to keep your stock price up, right? So I think it all depends on like at what stage, and what's the role of investors and who are the investors that you take. I think investors play a very important role in sort of like guiding that process, because if they're long-term investors, they don't they want those side effects addressed before they become, long-term, a huge snowball of an avalanche of problems, right? But I think, we have there's all kinds of investors today. Some investors are just sort of in it more as traders. I think venture investors in particular have an obligation, as they're on this journey with the founders, to sort of help the founders kind of anticipate some of these issues and, hopefully like mitigate the longer term risks.
And to go back a little bit to data visualization, it's like, do you think that there's gonna be in the next 5-10 years there's gonna be a change in how we consume this visualization? So these platforms analyzing data and visualizing it.
Yeah, I think that increasingly some of the most practical applications of more immersive, like experiences, whether it's augmented or virtual reality, will be maybe to explore some of these visualizations and maybe even, interact with them somehow more than just the two-dimensional or a screen representing a three-dimensional graph. What if you can sort of walk around a data visualization and you can manipulate some of the inputs to see how things change.
I see that also thanks to COVID. I think that people, every person in Earth started to, when COVID began, started to look at these graphs showing these graphs of deaths or people. New York Times were showing these graphs showing
Yeah.
this progression, and
Of
people were
infections. Yeah.
infections. People really familiar with data visualization. It was in the past was only people looking at the financial part of the newspaper, and now you can see data visualization showing a pie with whatever it is the data, and people like totally can understand and relate, and that means that many companies are showing data visualization in their applications now. They are offering that product to their users,
Yeah.
and that sounds really really awesome for me. That something that was related to other to other businesses and to other type of consumers, now it's a everyday Joe can actually look at the graph and maybe and probably understand.
But also, I think everyday Joe can also be presented with data that might be sort of incomplete, or, for example, with COVID, a lot of the data that was shown repeatedly was the number of positive cases.
Yeah,
Okay, but if you look at the number of actual like hospitalizations or deaths, those weren't as the graphs didn't do this in the same way that the new infections did.
that's a great
But it
point.
created this sort of like hysteria
Yeah,
and fear in the
because
population.
yes, because the newspaper in the end of the day they want to sell and they want to create interest. So these graphs were always in red, always. It doesn't matter that the contagion was going down, always in red. And when I noticed that when the contagion was going down, they were putting some. There's a new variant, there's
Yeah.
something else that's awful. And also the understanding of the graph, you're totally right, because in the end of the day, these companies are biased to something. So that data and those graphs were showing exactly what these newspapers wanted you to see and to understand and to feel. And and that's a very interesting point, because in the end of the day, if the graph is not being made by an algorithm, it's being made by someone, and that someone got, it's biased, and it's doing the graph to show something.
Maybe what we need is a visualization of bias